Well, hello and welcome to the 10-Minute Bible Study. Today we're going to be looking at one of my very favorite stories in the entire Gospel of Mark, maybe even in the whole Bible. It's the story where Jesus heals a man possessed with a legion of demons. Now, originally, this episode was actually supposed to be part of the previous episode. The two go together, so if you haven't watched that, go ahead and go back and watch episode 11 first. In that episode, Jesus calms the storm, a literal storm, wind and waves. And in this episode, Jesus calms a storm within a man. So really, this is part 2. We're going to be looking at Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. So grab a Bible and let's dive in. Mark writes, "Now they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes." The country of the Gerasenes is Gentile country, so Jesus has left Capernaum, he's crossed the sea, and now for the first time in his ministry in the Gospel of Mark, he's come to Gentile country. When Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Okay, there's a couple things here I'd like to draw our attention to. First, it says Jesus stepped out of the boat, not Jesus and his disciples, just Jesus. Secondly, Mark is using that word immediately again. We saw that a lot in the first couple chapters of Mark, Mark uses it as a way to drive the narrative forward. And that's what he's doing here. He's conveying a sense of action. As soon as Jesus gets out of the boat, this man comes running. We see he's coming running out of the tombs. So we're in Gentile country and we're at a graveyard. For Jews, that would have meant that this place was unclean. We know also that this man has an unclean spirit. Now, this man, he lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart and he broke the shackles into pieces. We see a few things here. One, that the people around him had actually tried to control this man, but he was uncontrollable. They knew something was wrong and they couldn't do anything about it. He had superhuman strength because of the spirits inside of him. We've seen this word bind before. Just a couple episodes previously, Jesus tells a parable about a strong man. And we saw that the strong man himself was Satan. And Jesus said that he was going to enter the strong man's house and bind him. Here's a man who's been taken over by spirits whom no one can bind. And Jesus has come to bind him, to clean the house, to set it in order. Jesus, as I think we'll see, has the strength to subdue him. Now, night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. This man is hurting himself. He's cutting himself because of the enemy. The enemy is interested not just in our souls, but he is destructive in his very nature. He wants to hurt us, and he wants us to hurt ourselves just because. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." The demons, they recognized Jesus' identity. To his disciples, he's still just a teacher. To the demons, he's the Son of the Most High God, the one who has authority over them. Even the more powerful demons, Jesus has authority over, and so they come running quickly to him. The man falls on his face. We've got examples here both of closing proximity, which we know in Mark is important, and posture. The demons, they acknowledge Jesus' authority over them, and they're afraid. And what's so interesting here is that they actually negotiate with Jesus, and Jesus gives in. For Jesus was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Okay, Legion would have been a loaded term for Mark and his audience. Most scholars think that the Gospel of Mark was written primarily for a Gentile audience, and specifically a Gentile audience that lived in Rome. And so this word legion, it is loaded. It is symbolic of all of the power of the empire. Power to destroy, power to conquer, to subdue, power over. And here Jesus is confronting the symbol of the all-powerful empire, and it's falling on his face before him, begging him for mercy. He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." Okay, so this territory is absolutely unclean. It's Gentile country, among the dead, a Gentile man who's bleeding, unclean again. And then you've got a giant herd of pigs no less in the area, and pigs, they were unclean for a Jew as well. It says here that there's 2,000 pigs, and Jesus, for whatever reason, gives the demons permission. He says, okay, yeah, you can enter the pigs. Now, of course, the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned into the sea. This is how destructive the forces of darkness are. This man has been hurt over and over again. He's hurting himself. And now they enter the pigs, and the first thing that happens is the pigs are destroyed. And it's not just one or two, 2,000 pigs. 2,000 pigs are destroyed. And so, of course, the herdsmen of the pig, verse 14 tells us, fled and told it in the city and the country. And the people came and to see what it was that had happened. 2,000 pigs would have been the livelihood of this town. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had had the legion, sitting there, clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. They must have been afraid for a couple of reasons. One, the demonstration of Jesus' authority. They had been trying to contain this man with the demons unsuccessfully for some time, and yet Jesus does it just like that. Second, they're probably afraid because they've lost their entire livelihood. The pigs, they're all gone. Jesus, get out of here. If this is what happens when you're here, we don't want it. And thirdly, they just don't understand what's going on here. This man, the text tells us, is sitting there quietly, clothed and in his right mind. Jesus is interested in holistic healing, complete restoration. He's not just interested in the physical, he's not just interested in the spiritual or the emotional, he's interested in all of it. The man is clothed physically, he's restored, he's put back together. He's in his right mind. The emotional and mental illness that he had suffered, Jesus has dealt with. And spiritual, the demons, they are gone. This man has been transformed through and through. The people see this, but they're afraid. They're more interested in their own well-being and their own comfort than they are in the restoration of this man, and so they ask Jesus to leave. They began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. And Jesus, as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. Okay, this is really important for a couple of reasons. One, Jesus does get right back into the boat, which tells us that Jesus crossed the sea through a storm for this one encounter. He has this one encounter with this one man, and then he gets back in the boat, which is incredible that Jesus would go to those lengths for this guy. And secondly, this man who's been completely transformed through and through by Jesus wants to be with Jesus. That's the word that Mark uses. He wanted to be with him, and Jesus, for the first time in his gospel, says no. He says no. And he did not permit him, but said to him, go home to tell your friends. Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. He tells the man instead to go and to share his testimony. He is sent. And this is the first time in the Gospel of Mark that Jesus has done that he's actually said to somebody, yes, you can go and tell who I am. And it's so interesting to me that it's this man that he chooses. And he says, no, actually, you can't be with me. I'm going to send you to do something else. And the man listens. And it's worth noting that Jesus does this not in Jewish territory, but in Gentile territory. It's Gentile territory that Jesus sends someone to reveal his identity to. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. The man does what Jesus asks. He is sent, and he tells, he proclaims, and people believe. Now there's a couple final things I'd like to say here. One, the disciples are nowhere to be seen in this story. My hunch is that they're still in the boat and that they missed this entire encounter. And friends, how often do I stay in the boat rather than get out and go with Jesus to the unclean place, the scary place, the uncomfortable and costly place? And I might see what Jesus is doing from a distance, like the disciples undoubtedly did, but I miss seeing it up close, and I miss being a part of it. And so I can't help but wonder if for us that's part of the invitation of the text, to be willing to go with Jesus to those places. The text also speaks to Jesus' heart and his mission, that he would cross the sea for one man. And lastly, it shows us that Jesus isn't just interested in calming literal storms, but that Jesus is in the business of calming the storms inside of you and me. That's what he does. This man is sitting calmly, just like the sea was, in his right mind. Friends, Jesus is in the business of calming storms. He can calm the storm that's inside of you, and he can calm the storm that's inside of me. That's it for this episode of the 10-Minute Bible Study. If you liked it, as always, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time as we jump into the story of the bleeding woman and Jairus and his daughter. Thanks for joining me.